All right, welcome back to part 2 of this tutorial on how to make an Easter bunny. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday. We were doing the ears, eyes, nose, mouth of our little bunny. And then we had just finished off painting and trying to get the eyes in the right position. We're going to continue on with this series by working on the body now. We need to do the torso, arms, kind of little paws and stuff on his hands and his feet. And then we'll do his little bunny tail. And after that, we might be able to work on some of the texture features. We might save that for the next video. We'll see how far we get with this one. Hopefully this isn't a 4-part series, but we'll see how quickly we can get through it. All right, so let's get into designing the torso. First of all, I'm going to make sure that all the head stuff is in the right place. I'll move this lighting up here real quick, and we'll focus it so that it kind of matches the original lighting. We can also use 3 fingers to move the lighting kind of off to the side, and again give that lighting the same look that we got from the example photo. And it looks something like that. That's pretty good. I'm still not a huge fan of the eye position, but we'll save that for the end. We'll do the details later. Okay, torso. Let's see here. Let's add a new group. And let's try not to stick that group in anywhere. We'll keep it its own separate thing. We'll rename it. We'll call this body. Like that. And now we can start adding things to it. We'll again start out with our spheres. And let's turn our post subdivision up to 7 as usual. And with that sphere in place, we can move this down into our bunny's position. For some reason, this sphere added with a whole bunch of it's kind of twisted in space. You can see that it's not centered with the world, it's not centered with the environment, and it's the Gizmo tool is pointing in all kinds of directions. So what I want to do is show you real quick how to fix something like this. This is not an uncommon occurrence, and there's a couple ways to resolve. Anytime you get an object, you've added it to your scene, and you've got arrows pointing off in every direction, but none of them seem to correspond to like the world itself. If we hit our front view, this little tennis ball looking thing up here in the top right, if we click that front view, this should be front, and then these arrows should all be pointing in right angles, either towards us, up, or right. They're not doing that. And there's actually a quick way to fix this. We can actually go into our Gizmo tool up here in the top right, this setting, and then we can go over into this translation, and then we can hit reset on that translation. That helps a lot too. We can go into this matrix world and hit reset on that as well. And then we've kind of exited local orientation. We've reset. Well, we should have been able to reset that. I think the problem lies here, actually. The body group is in the wrong place, and it's causing our sphere to be in the wrong place. And now they're equal. Okay, so anytime you have some weird positioning with your Gizmo tool and it doesn't quite sit right with the world, so to speak, you can come up in here and you can hit these refresh buttons, and they will fix the world positioning or the local positioning. And that way you can kind of get control over your object. But there are going to be times where you position an object off to the side and you have it oriented a certain way, maybe in relation to how you're modeling the subject. And then you don't want to hit these reset buttons. Say you hit these reset buttons and that's not what you want to do. But you still want to be able to maneuver this thing in relation to the world in an easy way without having to do some magic by grabbing, these squares to move objects, which can mess with alignment. There's another tool that you can use. It's this align tool. Okay. And what that does is it just makes your Gizmo tool align with the world or align with the environment. And you can still get the previous kind of aligned control of an object, even though it's not, by default, it's not aligned because you've positioned it in a different orientation or a different way. So this is a really useful tool for just getting things into position when you've had to do a lot of manipulation to maneuver something into place. That comes up a lot with something like asymmetrical objects, like whiskers, for instance. As you can see in this background image, there's some whiskers coming off the rabbit's face. And to make whiskers, if you try to make whiskers coming off the face like that, and you needed to reorient them, it could get a little bit tricky, just because you probably would have worked pretty hard just to get them into place into position in the first place. And trying to, further maneuver them can get a little bit tricky, especially as these orientations get worse and worse. Okay, so we'll go ahead and reset this object back to world orientation. I'll go back here. We want to make sure that we've got the body selected. We'll reset its world transition. We can actually do that with the head as well. Get that back centered. Hopefully that doesn't make too big of a mess. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and now I can trust that these groups are, at least these two, are oriented with the world. And so everything's dead center. And now when I try and do something like mirroring, that mirroring, I can trust it's dead center as well. It just helps line things up and keeps things from getting off center. You can see here, I've moved this off of world center, and you can see that world center line here. We can actually turn on the grid view. That helps with orientation as well. We can see that now my ball is off center. I can hit reset and get that thing back centered with my object so that I can model a little bit easier. You saw in my last video, or you might have noticed in the last video, that I had some trouble with fighting symmetry, and that's because I had let my model drift off of the world center. And by default, when you're trying to do symmetric things like mirroring and trying to mirror, say I validate this and I'm trying to drag or move the shape, what can happen is that if it's off of world center, by default, this symmetric setting is set to world. And if we move this sphere off to the right, and then I try and use my move tool, I'll get movement on one side, but not on the other. And that can be really frustrating. And then having to fight with that constantly when you have objects that are off center with the world can be pretty frustrating. And then you have to constantly switch to local centering or local symmetry so that you can get that same functionality that you were trying to get by default. If you just leave things centered while you're working on symmetrical objects as best you can, it'll save you a lot of extra clicking around. Okay, that was a long tangent, but this is a tutorial video, and the idea is to try and help people get oriented with Nomad Sculpt and better understand what's happening within the application. And this can be one of the trickier ones to deal with, especially when things get off-centered. Let's go back. I want to make sure my post division did get turned up, and it did. We're gonna make this torso, and I've watched quite a few tutorial videos on this in particular, and what we're going to be going for is kind of, like the shape of a penguin, but with like a back arch kind of thing going on. So unfortunately, this egg is obscuring a lot of the shape of our rabbit, so we can't really truly see what shape this rabbit should be as far as its torso is. But we can just kind of go based on some other models that I've seen before, and some modeling processes that I've seen before. I'll do my best to replicate those for this scene. One thing that we want to do is we're going to do symmetrical modeling with our move tool. We're going to kick this thing way up in size. That way we're manipulating more of the surface, and we need to start making kind of that penguin body shape, right? It needs to be kind of like this, where it's kind of plump at the bottom and more narrow at the top. And we need to do that. While we're facing from the front. But from the back, we've got some other work that we need to do. And this can't be symmetrical. It's actually going to have kind of an almost S, a reverse S shape to it. And that will become apparent as we get into it, why that's important. But we're going to do something like this, where we kind of have a plump tummy. The back kind of arches a bit. We'll turn this down, and then the back side is going to come out a bit like that. And this is kind of the shape that we need to go for. And as you can see from the model, it's not too far off. We're probably a little flatter on the tummy than we should be, and that's just because we were grabbing such a large surface area that we've lost some of the plumpness of our bunny. But that's about right. Let's use the Gizmo tool and kind of push this more into position. But we're shooting for something kind of like that. And then as we add the legs, it'll add more emphasis on that hip area. And it looks like we're still a little too wide here, so we'll use our move tool, kind of a larger move tool, and squeeze in that area a little bit more, kind of like that. And hopefully we're just going to try and orient the head like that. Use our Gizmo to pull it in like that. We'll shrink it down to fit. Let's use our trick to blend and opacity down. That way we can just see through and try and fit the head position to match similarly to our reference image. It's going to be something like that. And then we need to move it backward, maybe. And that should get the position closer, because we need it more like that. Which means we're not too far. We're not too far off. It looks like maybe this upper torso is a little bit wider. We're about right here. And then we'll move it back here. And then up again. And then back. And that looks very odd, actually. We're going to be in this orientation. Okay, that's fine. We'll kick that opacity back up. And let's see here. Yeah, that's fine. We'll come down just a little bit and come forward just a little bit. The reference image is not the end-all be-all of how we're going to do this, but we'll try and hit it close just so it looks cool. And of course we're at kind of this angle here. Yeah, not bad. I feel like somehow his body's just still too big. There we go. Cool. All right, so we got the body done-ish. We'll see how it goes. And now we can start working on the arms. Now the arms, I think if we did 3 spheres, it might get us there. So let's try that. So that's the body. And then let's add a new group. We'll call this arms. And then we're going to add a sphere. Again, post subdivision at 7. And let's see if we can get it into position. For some reason, I've selected the ear. And we'll do a mirror. Shrink it down. And we're going to bring this up, because his shoulders kind of pretty much go straight to his neck. And he doesn't have much of a neck at all. Okay. And again, this is, as I was mentioning earlier, this is where the orientation is going to get really weird, because we're going to have to stretch this out, turn it, rotate it down, and then push it back in until it's pretty close to where the arms need to be. We're probably going to need to make it smaller. Bring it up a little bit. Kind of like that. Kind of like that. Yeah. Okay. And let's validate that. Let's duplicate it by cloning it. And then this is where we're going to use our align tool to help us position the new one. A little bit. This one, actually, we can reset the rotation. That'll help a lot. That'll save us a little bit of time. And then we can do something just like that. And it's going to be just a little bit shorter than the other one. Pull it up, pull it forward. And this one needs to be out a little bit more. And it looks like it's a bit thinner. Because as you can see, there's obviously a clear separation around the elbow area. Trying to get this in position will be a little bit tough. Kind of like that. I'm going to shrink that down. Because we're looking at him like this view, right? And so this is going to tilt downwards like that. Come out. We'll use our align tool again. Make that a little bit easier. And that's pretty much it. Okay. We should be able to merge these two. We'll just double check the position and make sure that when I merge them, it's not going to be too ugly. But that looks pretty good. What we'll do is we can either join or we can do a voxel remesh on either of these objects, and it'll just combine them into one. And we'll make sure that the resolution is around 200. And now we'll come in and we're going to smooth out the elbow here and here and make it look more like it was always a single piece. Just like that. We'll use solo. That way we don't have all that body in the way. There we go. And that looks perfect. There we go. And we still got that little crease. The interesting part is going to be the little paw detail. Now we've used the inflate and crease tools before, and I think we could take that approach now again. So we'll just approach this by doing a crease here. And I need to be careful to just draw straight lines, because again, they kind of curve themselves. It looks like the upper paw has a long one and the second one is short, like that. Now it still looks a little bit goofy, and that's just because we haven't added any plumpness to this area. But we can come in here like this and kind of make that look more like a paw. We'll turn the size of this up. Turn on the wire mesh. That way I can kind of see what we're doing a little bit better. Okay. And then we'll come in here and very carefully inflate there. And then across the back of the hand like that. And once I start seeing it look a little scary, let's remesh it real quick. I'll come in and start smoothing things out once it starts looking like maybe I've done too much. Okay. I actually don't like that. We're going to go back just a little bit. I think I went too heavy on the back of his hand, and maybe it wasn't necessary to do it quite that much. Let's turn the intensity like way down and then do it like that. And now we'll remesh and smooth like that. Cool. Let's use the move tool. Turn that down a bit, and then let's see if we can move this paw kind of inward. I don't know if that's going to give us the effect that we're going for, but we'll keep trying. Yeah, we gotta kind of plump up these fingers a bit. Like that. And then we might even be able to use the move tool to move the paw inwards a little bit and flatten it. That way it's a little bit more pronounced that it's a paw. Like that. Okay. And it looks like the crease got a little lost. We'll turn it down a bit and come in and recrease it. Remesh a little bit. Kind of like that. I almost feel like that whole area could be bigger, but we could. Let's see here. How do we want to do that? We could probably just mask off that area. Maybe. No, it feels dangerous. We'll just use our inflate. We'll make the inflate really large to cover that whole hand, and see if we can't like make the whole hand area bigger. Like that. Okay. And then we might even be so bold as to deflate the arm a bit. It's scary using this tool because it can do a lot of damage real fast, but with the intensity lower, it's not too bad. It's not too wild. And then let's use a lot of smoothing. There we go. Yeah, a little scary doing that one, but I think we got there. I think that's what we're looking for. Cool. All right, we got the arms done. Let's turn off solo and see how we did. That's impressive. Okay, that looks good. All right, now we got to do the legs. We have just a little bit of time left on this video that we can do the legs, and tail, of course, be super simple. Let's see here. Legs, going to be similar process. I'd imagine we're going to use 3 spheres for the legs. So let's go ahead and let's make a new group. And let's put it inside the body. Let's call it legs. Like that. And we'll start adding our spheres, kick up our resolution. We'll mirror it. I'll turn on our Gizmo tool, shrink it down a bit, and get it into position. Okay, so the legs are going to attach somewhere back here. So we need it about right there, stretched out a bit, tilt it, pull it forward, make it quite a bit smaller. But it needs to be something like that. Yeah, not bad. And then we'll make them a bit more narrow. Because he's got, as you can see here, he's got a decent gap in here between the legs. And we want to maintain that ratio as best we can. And as we mentioned before, yeah, that the legs will add a lot of mass to his torso. We're going to aim those down a bit. And let's put him in position and see how far off we are. So he should be like that, right? And we need to move his legs. They're kind of bigger. Come down a bit. Actually, we need to go up because he's more like that, which means we need to shrink the legs. More like that. And there. Let's pretend that we're just working on that part alone. And they're not going to rotate too much. It might look like it does, but some of it's just an illusion. Okay. That's fine. Definitely from the front, it looks a little odd. I suspect it's probably something closer to that. Okay. And a little bit too touchy with the arms. It's probably just because it's so big. Trying to get the ratios right is a little tough. Okay. That'll be good enough, I think. Definitely we could stretch it out like that and move it. Yeah. Pull it in just a touch. Okay. Let's work on the feet. Maybe if we do the feet too, it'll kind of help us figure out what's going on with the rest of him. I think this just needs to rotate in more. And that will make it easier. Yeah, because once I add the feet, it's going to add some mass to the front of his legs, and it'll look a little bit more sane. All right, let's add, let's just duplicate this sphere, clone it. Move it forward and tilt it up. We'll turn off a line so that we're more oriented to what we're actually doing. We'll shrink it down. We'll move it into position at the base of the foot or the leg, like that. Definitely needs to be smaller. And that's pretty good. Just need to rotate it out like that. That's wildly cute. I feel like that whole assembly should move a bit. It's kind of hard to correctly visualize where it should be. The feet are a little bit bigger. More like that. And a little bit wider. And definitely you can tell the foot has been flattened out. We can use this move tool, make it pretty big to catch the bottom of the foot. Let's turn on for a little bit. Let's just go into matte cap mode so that it's easier to see some of the stuff that we're doing. And let's just move. I want to like be able to click on this other foot. Yeah, there we go. I want to be able to click on the other one so that I can do this and see it correctly. Yeah, like that. Yeah, it's going to look like that. That's better. Okay. And then let's crease to get the toes. And then again, I just got to be careful that I'm just creasing in straight lines. I have a tendency to try and curve things unnecessarily. Let's make that just a touch longer. Cute. And let's remesh it up to 200. We'll use our smooth tool to blend that out a little bit. Okay. Cool. That's pretty cute. I think what I want to do is I'm going to blend the leg into the torso a bit more. That's going to require me coming in here. Let's validate this shape. We're going to use a move tool. And now we can start kind of distorting this leg to mold into the torso like that. And then we can pull up on it a bit to get it in like that. And let's maintain some separation between the arms and the legs. But it needs to look something like that. Turn the size down and then more like that. That's cute. Okay. Now, what I need to do is for now, I want to keep this in its own separate mirror. And then validate it. Keep it instanced. That's fine. And then I want to combine it with the body. This should not be inside body. There we go. And I want to combine these two by remeshing to 200. And now that makes it all one piece, and I can come in and smooth out these edges, and I can get rid of what looks like that huge separation between the legs and the body. I can make it look more seamless this way. It's kind of like a full commit here. When you do that, you got to be pretty happy with where all the positioning is. Otherwise, you're stuck with it, or you need to go way back in the history of your project, and it's not going to be fun. Okay. I'm pretty comfortable with how that looks. His legs look just a tad bit goofy. But I guess that adds to his character. Something like that, right? Yeah, not too far off. Okay, let's turn off our matte cap. I'll just go to lit PBR again. We need to do the little circles on his feet real quick. That won't be too tough. We can just add a sphere here. We'll kick up the subdivision as usual. We'll use a line to get it to calm down a bit. Move it out so that we can see it better. And we're just gonna shrink these down, get them in position like that. I'll stretch it out, rotate it, and let's turn off a line, see if that helps. Yeah, with these weird positionings, it can be pretty tough to get things where you want them. Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to be like that. Okay. Yeah, about like that. How's that look? Needs to rotate just a little bit more. Cool. And we'll clone, move the other one into position. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Getting positioning right is super tough. Okay. And then the last one. Let's see if we can get it. right, that's it for the toes, and then we'll do the pad of the foot. Last one, we'll clone that, make it quite a bit bigger, like that, and then stick it into his foot. Like that. I have to rotate it a bit. Let's do X-ray so we can see what that shape looks like. Let's turn off that. I want to squeeze it down more and then pull it out, rotate it to orient with the foot a little bit better. And now that's really hard to get in the right position, but that's about what we're looking for. I'll squeeze it down even flatter. Rotate it more. Yeah, that's tough. That's pretty tough to get in place, but yeah. Something like that. Okay. Pretty good. And let's just throw on his tail. We'll do some color and we'll take a break. And in this part, let me go back to his body. We'll assume that the tail is attached to the body. Post subdivision up to 7 again. Shrink this down and stick it right there. We'll make it a little bit bigger. How big is that tail? I guess rabbits' tails are pretty fluffy in comparison to their torsos. It's interesting. Pretty sure it's not going to be off center, that's for sure. Okay. Maybe more like that. It's not weird at all. Okay, let's shrink it down in these two directions and then pull it out like that and see if that gets us pretty close to the original. I'm gonna guess that this AI image, the tail's not quite proportionally correct for the animal, but that's fine. Okay, we'll just validate everything and hit the color and we'll call it done. So we should go ahead and hit paint all on that. And then let's select all these except for the little pads on his feet. Sure. Paint that. Let's do the body. Paint that. And then arms. Paint. And it looks like his nose and the feet are the same color. So whatever we did for the nose, I'm actually going to name this nose. That way I can find it easier if I need to reference it later for the color. And then the nose, we'll just sample the nose so we can get that color And then we'll go back down to the pads of his feet. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cool. Okay. All right, that's it for today. We'll pause here just because it's already been nearly an hour since we started. And in part 3 of the series, we'll cover the texturing. We'll add that egg, and then we'll start in on the basket, or maybe the platform before we get into the basket, and make any adjustments that we need to make from there. We still need to add his eyebrows. Eventually he'll get eyebrows. We'll get it in there, but let's close it out for today. If you like what you see, if you like this series, please give it a like or share it with your friends. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more updates on future projects. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks.